Comedy's greatest wisecracker left behind a story far darker than his punchlines. Groucho Marx, the cigar-wielding legend of Hollywood's golden age, lived a life of outrageous humor, dazzling success, and quiet heartbreak. His once glorious mansion now stands as a forgotten relic, tied to personal tragedy and the fading echoes of an era he helped define. From shocking loss to the fortune he amassed, Groucho's story is as bittersweet as it is iconic. Let's start the video with an extremely heartbreaking event in the life of Groucho Marx. Reportedly, on June 22, 1977, he was admitted to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, suffering from pneumonia, a serious illness for anyone, but particularly perilous for an 86-year-old man whose health had already begun to decline. Friends and family knew that Groucho had been slowing down for some time. The once razor-sharp wit of the legendary comedian and film star had dulled slightly, though flashes of his irreverent humor still broke through even during illness. For a man whose career had spanned vaudeville stages, Hollywood backlots, and television screens, the hospital room seemed an unlikely final act. Marx remained hospitalized for nearly 2 months as doctors attempted to stabilize his condition. Visitors who saw him in those weeks often remarked on the strange duality, how even in frailty, Groucho retained a mischievous spark in his eyes. But pneumonia proved relentless. On August 19, 1977, Groucho Marx died quietly at Cedars-Sinai, closing the curtain on one of comedy's most distinctive voices. His death came only 4 months after the passing of his brother Groucho Marx, further marking the end of an era for the famous family of entertainers. Yet, when the news broke, Groucho's departure was not the world-shaking headline it might have been in another moment. Only 3 days earlier, on August 16th, the sudden and shocking death of Elvis Presley had captured the world's attention. Television networks, newspapers, and radio stations were consumed with the frenzy surrounding the king of rock and roll. As a result, reports on Groucho's death were noticeably muted, a bittersweet irony for a man whose influence on modern comedy and pop culture had been profound. Some fans and cultural commentators later lamented how Groucho's passing seemed to slip through the cracks of public memory during that week of media saturation. After his death, Groucho's body was cremated, and his ashes were placed in Eden Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles. The cemetery, known for being the final resting place of many Hollywood luminaries, became another quiet reminder of his long career. His gravestone bears no epitaph, but Groucho had not left the world without a suggestion. In one of his final interviews, when asked what he might want inscribed, he quipped with typical irreverence, "Excuse me, I can't stand up." The line, perfectly balancing absurdity and self-awareness, has since been remembered as a quintessential Grouchoism, dry, funny, and unexpectedly poignant. Groucho was survived by his 3 children, Arthur, Miriam, and Melinda, as well as his youngest brother, Zeppo Marx, who would live for just 2 more years before passing away in 1979. The familial ties that had built the Marx brothers' empire of laughter were now mostly memories. The comedy troupe that had redefined what could be done with timing, absurdity, and wordplay in American entertainment was all but gone, leaving behind a legacy of films like Duck Soup, A Night at the Opera, and countless one-liners that had entered the cultural lexicon. However, the years following Groucho's death were not without turmoil. Litigation over his estate dragged well into the 1980s, casting a shadow over his final chapter. Central to the legal battles was Aaron Fleming, Groucho's companion and manager during his later years. Fleming had been both praised and criticized. Some viewed her as a devoted caretaker who helped revive Groucho's career in the 1970s, while others accused her of manipulating him and mismanaging his finances. Ultimately, the courts awarded the bulk of Groucho's estate to his 3 children, ruling in their favor after years of wrangling. Fleming was ordered to repay $472,000 to the estate, a significant judgment that underscored the contentiousness of the proceedings. And when it comes to Groucho Marx's assets, we cannot ignore his expensive houses. Firstly, at 179 East 93rd Street in Manhattan's Yorkville neighborhood, a modest tenement building once housed one of comedy's most legendary families. In the late 1890s, Julius Groucho Marx and his brothers, Chico, Harpo, Zeppo, and Gummo, spent their formative years packed into a fourth-floor apartment that was scarcely large enough for a single family, let alone the 10 relatives who sometimes crowded its few rooms. The Marx household was far from glamorous. They lived in a working-class German and Irish immigrant enclave, a place where rent was cheap, the walls were thin, and the scent of cabbage dinners often drifted from one apartment to the next. The Marx family's financial struggles were a constant backdrop. Their father, Sam Marx, affectionately called Frenchie, tried his hand at tailoring, but his business ventures never quite succeeded. Their mother, Minnie, was the driving force, both the disciplinarian and the dreamer, who saw in her sons a potential escape from poverty through performance. The brothers often recalled how Minnie would push them toward the stage, encouraging their natural sense of humor and mischief even when the world outside their window was harsh and uncertain. Life on East 93rd Street was defined by both hardship and community. The boys learned early to find joy in small moments, a stolen hour at a nearby playground, street games with neighborhood kids, or improvised skits to make their parents laugh. The Yorkville neighborhood itself played a key role in shaping their comedic instincts. The Marx brothers grew up among a medley of cultures. German, Irish, Italian, and Jewish immigrants all lived side by side, which exposed them to a cacophony of languages, mannerisms, and stories. The brothers would later parody these very accents and stereotypes on stage, turning their multicultural upbringing into rich comedic material. Inside their cramped quarters, the Marx boys began experimenting with entertainment. Chico tinkered on a battered piano, Harpo developed his harp-playing skills, and Groucho, still Julius at the time, honed his sharp wit. These early performances were not grand productions, but small, playful attempts to fill long evenings with laughter. The family's poverty meant there were no private bedrooms or quiet study corners. Instead, noise, chatter, and music filled every inch of their tenement. Biographers often note that this environment, crowded, noisy, and full of competing personalities, was a proving ground for the timing, improvisation, and quick thinking that would later define the Marx brothers' signature style. The nearby playground, a humble outdoor space just a few blocks from their building, became a second home. Over the decades, that very playground would be renamed in their honor, the Marx Brothers Playground. For neighborhood kids at the turn of the century, it was a place to blow off steam after school or work. For the Marx boys, it was also a stage without walls, a place where they learned to hold an audience, even if that audience was just a handful of peers giggling at a prank or a silly face. Yorkville's tenements were far from comfortable, but they offered a unique education in resilience and observation. Groucho would later joke about their humble origins in interviews and routines, exaggerating their poverty for comic effect. Yet beneath the jokes was a kernel of truth. These early years forged the hunger and humor that propelled the brothers from the crowded streets of Manhattan to the bright lights of Broadway and Hollywood. In the years that followed, as the Marx brothers became household names, 179 East 93rd Street achieved a kind of unofficial landmark status. Fans and historians often made pilgrimages to the building, eager to imagine the young brothers rehearsing their first bits of vaudeville shtick or plotting harmless mischief. While the tenement itself was unremarkable, a standard, aging walk-up of the type scattered across New York, it represented the starting line for an extraordinary journey. Next, on the north shore of Long Island, among the elegant estates and tree-lined streets of Great Neck's Gold Coast, sits 21 Lincoln Road, a charming colonial-style home with a quiet but storied history. Built in the early 1920s, This residence is now most famous as the Long Island home of Groucho Marx, the razor-witted comedian whose rise to national fame was well underway by the time he moved in. Historians and real estate listings alike consistently cite the property as Groucho's primary residence from the mid to late 1920s through around 1931, a period when the Marx brothers were transitioning from vaudeville sensations to full-fledged Hollywood stars. The Colonial itself, with its classic symmetry, white clapboard facade, and gracious porch, embodied the comfortable elegance of Great Neck's upper-middle-class neighborhoods. While not as palatial as the Gatsby-esque mansions further along the Gold Coast, 21 Lincoln Road represented a remarkable step up from the Marx family's cramped tenement days on East 93rd Street in Manhattan. For Groucho, it was proof that years of grueling tours on the vaudeville circuit had finally paid off. The house provided not only comfort, but also stability for his growing family at a time when the brothers were becoming some of the most recognizable entertainers in America. The late 1920s were a transformative era for Groucho. The Marx Brothers had conquered Broadway with hits like The Coconuts, 1925, and Animal Crackers, 1928, and they were preparing to make their leap into motion pictures. Great Neck was an appealing location for show business figures of the time. It was close enough to Manhattan for convenient travel to theaters and studios, yet far enough removed to offer a measure of privacy. The neighborhood was home to other stage and film performers, writers, and wealthy professionals, making it an ideal enclave for someone like Groucho, who thrived on conversation and observation. Accounts of Groucho's life in Great Neck often describe a man who relished the suburban tranquility but couldn't entirely leave behind his biting humor. Neighbors remembered him as witty but approachable, a man who might crack a sardonic remark at the grocer or amuse dinner guests with stories from the road. Some anecdotes suggest that the house at 21 Lincoln Road hosted informal gatherings of friends and fellow performers, with Groucho serving as both raconteur and sharp-tongued critic. The home's relatively modest size, compared to the extravagant estates nearby, also reflected Groucho's personality: practical, self-aware, and faintly amused by the trappings of wealth. It was during his years in Great Neck that Groucho's first marriage to Ruth Johnson entered a turbulent phase. The strains of fame, constant touring, and Groucho's own restlessness began to show. Although the house provided a picturesque backdrop, Groucho was not one to settle fully into domestic bliss. Nevertheless, the memories of his time there, both personal and professional, remained tied to an important chapter in his life. The stock market crash of 1929 and the subsequent Great Depression dramatically reshaped the lives of many on Long Island's Gold Coast. For Groucho, the economic downturn coincided with the Marx brothers' relocation to California as they pursued film careers under Paramount Pictures. By around 1931, Groucho had left 21 Lincoln Road, trading Long Island's leafy avenues for the promise of Hollywood. Yet the Great Neck years represented a fleeting moment when the Marx brothers were Broadway royalty, and Groucho, still in his 40s, was adjusting to success after years of struggle. One more, perched high above Los Angeles on the winding roads of the Hollywood Hills, 1277 Sunset Plaza Drive, is a stately, traditional-meets-Regency-style residence that embodies the glamour and privacy of classic Hollywood. Built around 1935, the 3,700-square-foot house would become forever tied to the legendary comedian Groucho Marx, who owned it during some of the most pivotal years of his career. Long after he moved on, the property continued to surface in real estate listings and local press as a former Groucho Marx home, a nod to its place in Hollywood's rich cultural history. By the late 1930s and early 1940s, Groucho was already a star, thanks to the Marx brothers' iconic films like Duck Soup and A Night at the Opera. But the coming decades would see him transition into radio and then television, broadening his audience and cementing his reputation as one of America's sharpest wits. The Sunset Plaza residence was the backdrop for this transformation. Nestled among hedged gardens and secluded from the bustling Sunset Strip below, it offered both privacy and proximity, a place where Groucho could retreat from the public eye but remain within easy reach of Hollywood studios and social circles. The house itself reflected the understated elegance of 1930s Los Angeles. Its Regency-style details, graceful lines, classical proportions, and period interiors stood apart from the Spanish colonial revival homes so common in the hills. The property's terraces and sweeping views of the city provided an enviable stage for entertaining. Its pool, lined with stone and framed by manicured hedges, was a hallmark of Hollywood living. Over the years, the residence would undergo substantial updates, but the core elements that defined its character during Groucho's ownership remained intact. Neighbors and guests from that era often recalled the humor and casual wit that accompanied any evening spent at 1277 Sunset Plaza. Groucho was known to host gatherings that mixed fellow entertainers, writers, and industry insiders. Although he never sought to impress with ostentation, his clever conversation and wry observations made the home's atmosphere sparkle. Unlike some stars who cultivated rigidly formal households, Groucho was at ease among friends, cigar in hand, lounging near the pool or on one of the terraces, ready to deliver a perfectly timed quip. It was from this Hollywood Hills retreat that Groucho embarked on a new chapter, radio and television dominance. His appearances on radio programs and his later hosting of You Bet Your Life in the late 1940s and 1950s introduced his humor to millions beyond the movie theater. The home, with its serene setting and classic Hollywood features, was more than a residence. It was a workspace of sorts, a place where Groucho could prepare for broadcasts, polish material, or simply recharge after grueling studio days. The Sunset Plaza Drive address also symbolized Groucho's arrival as a Hollywood fixture. Decades earlier, he had grown up in a cramped Yorkville tenement in Manhattan, performing wherever he could to support his family. Now, from the windows of his 1930s home, he could look out over a city he had conquered. The house's presence on a street known for attracting industry elites further underlined his place among the entertainment world's most enduring names. As Los Angeles evolved, so did the property. Successive owners modernized the interiors while respecting its traditional bones, ensuring the house retained the elegant Hollywood aura that had first attracted Groucho. Real estate listings, whenever the house resurfaced on the market, never failed to invoke his name. Local press coverage, too, consistently highlighted its heritage, reminding readers that one of comedy's greats once paced those halls and cracked jokes on those terraces. And of course, we cannot ignore this house. In the prestigious enclave of Trousdale Estates in Beverly Hills, nestled among rolling hills and sweeping city views, stands a low-slung estate at 1083 North Hillcrest Road, one of the most celebrated residences associated with Groucho Marx during the later decades of his life. Distinguished not only by its celebrity provenance but also by its architectural pedigree, the home is attributed to Wallace Neff, one of mid-century California's most influential architects. Neff, renowned for his sophisticated yet unpretentious designs, is often credited with combining European elegance with the relaxed Southern California lifestyle, a philosophy perfectly embodied in this estate. Commissioned in the 1950s, the property reflects Neff's signature approach to residential design, a single-story structure emphasizing horizontal lines, natural light, and seamless integration with the surrounding landscape. For Groucho, who by then was an established icon in comedy, radio, and television, this home represented both privacy and prestige. The Trousdale neighborhood, developed during the post-war boom, was known for attracting Hollywood elite, offering sweeping city and mountain vistas while maintaining seclusion from the public eye. In many ways, 1083 North Hillcrest Road was Groucho's sanctuary, a place where he could live comfortably, entertain select friends, and enjoy the quiet luxuries of a Hollywood Hills lifestyle. Architectural descriptions consistently highlight several features that made the estate distinctive. Large windows brought in abundant natural light, framing panoramic views of Los Angeles and the rolling Trousdale Hills. A wood-paneled library, a favorite of Groucho's, offered a cozy retreat, a room where he could read, write, or host intimate discussions with friends from the entertainment world. The interior spaces were designed to feel open yet welcoming, a reflection of Groucho's personality. Warm, engaging, and always a little playful. Surrounding the house, the large grounds and swimming pool reinforced the home's status as a classic Trousdale residence, perfect for quiet contemplation or lively outdoor gatherings. Unlike the more transient residences of his earlier career, ranging from Manhattan tenements to Hollywood Hills colonial homes, the North Hillcrest property was a long-term home for Groucho. He resided there for decades, allowing it to become synonymous with his later life. The estate's design, blending understated elegance with comfortable functionality, mirrored Groucho's own approach to aging in the public eye. Stylish, but not ostentatious, private but capable of hosting the occasional social engagement. The home's connection to Wallace Neff further cemented its architectural significance. Neff was famous for designing residences for Hollywood stars, including Clark Gable, Barbara Stanwyck, and Frank Sinatra, and the Marx estate stands among his more restrained yet sophisticated commissions. Press coverage and real estate records frequently emphasize the estate's cultural and historical importance. Descriptions in listings routinely identify it as built for or substantially lived in by Groucho Marx, highlighting its enduring association with the comedian. Architectural surveys of Trousdale Estates often reference the house as a prime example of Neff's mid-century residential style, noting the way it balances luxury with the casual ease that defined post-war Beverly Hills living. Its single-story layout, expansive grounds, and integration with the hillside all exemplify the hallmarks of Neff's approach, design that complements both the occupant's lifestyle and the natural surroundings. Beyond the bricks, wood, and glass, the estate at 1083 North Hillcrest Road holds significance as a backdrop to Groucho's later life. It was here that he hosted friends from Hollywood and the entertainment industry, reflecting on a career that had begun in vaudeville and flourished in film, radio, and television. The house witnessed Groucho in his private moments, enjoying his library, strolling his terraces, and entertaining in the poolside gardens, while also standing as a tangible symbol of the professional and personal success he had achieved. Finally, while New York and Los Angeles were the principal stages of Groucho Marx's professional and personal life, the comedian also became part of the exclusive Hollywood migration to Southern California's desert enclaves, specifically Palm Springs and Rancho Mirage. In the mid-20th century, this region evolved from a quiet oasis into a playground for the entertainment elite, offering both privacy and the leisure lifestyle that Hollywood stars craved. Among those early settlers was Groucho himself, whose presence in the Tamarisk Ranchos and Rancho Mirage communities reflected not only his financial success, but also his desire for refuge from the relentless pace of show business. Tamarisk Ranchos, a residential area within the broader Rancho Mirage region, was characterized by spacious lots, desert landscaping, and a semi-rural atmosphere that allowed its residents to enjoy a sense of seclusion. For Groucho, this desert retreat was a striking contrast to the bustling streets of Manhattan and the Hollywood Hills. Contemporary accounts describe the Marx family's presence in the area as emblematic of the era. Entertainers, producers, and socialites escaping the limelight of Los Angeles for the sun-soaked, palm-studded tranquility of the Coachella Valley. The property provided Groucho and his family with a private playground, complete with the freedom to entertain, relax, and socialize away from prying eyes. Local histories and newspaper coverage from the time repeatedly emphasized Groucho's involvement not only as a homeowner, but also as an active member of the region's burgeoning social scene. The comedian was an early participant in neighborhood clubs and social organizations that would come to define the Palm Springs lifestyle. Membership in these clubs offered the Marx family access to golf courses, tennis courts, and community events, while simultaneously providing Groucho with a network of friends and peers from the entertainment industry. These social spaces, often documented in local chronicles, became venues for informal gatherings, cocktail parties, and playful competitions where Groucho's sharp wit could entertain both neighbors and fellow celebrities. Groucho's presence in Rancho Mirage also highlighted a broader pattern among Hollywood's Golden Age stars: the migration to desert retreats as a form of both luxury and strategic privacy. The region's climate, open landscapes, and relative isolation allowed celebrities like Groucho to maintain their public personas in Los Angeles while enjoying the freedoms of more private living. Stories of the Marx family in the desert often describe Groucho strolling the grounds of his property, engaging with club members, or participating in spirited games and conversations that echoed the energy of his vaudeville days, albeit in a much quieter, sun-drenched setting. The desert homes were more than mere vacation residences. They were integral to Groucho's personal and social life. While his New York tenement and Hollywood Hills estates represented the arenas of work and fame, the Rancho Mirage property was a site for relaxation, creativity, and companionship. Biographical accounts note that Groucho valued these retreats as escapes where he could unwind, observe human behavior, and perhaps even devise new material for his radio, television, or personal engagements. For the Marx family, the Palm Springs region offered a balance of leisure and social vitality, enabling them to maintain connections with Hollywood colleagues while enjoying a slower pace of life. Groucho's early adoption of the Tamarisk Ranchos community is also notable for its historical impact. He was among the first wave of Hollywood celebrities to establish permanent residences in the area, helping to shape Rancho Mirage's reputation as an elite desert enclave. Subsequent generations of stars, from Frank Sinatra to Bob Hope, followed a path paved in part by Groucho and his contemporaries, who recognized the allure of privacy, natural beauty, and community life in the desert. Regional historians and real estate chronicles often cite his ownership as a key marker of the area's cultural evolution, emphasizing the Marx family's role in the social history of Palm Springs. What do you think about Groucho Marx? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.